mission?
My mission? To make, record stories, make things visible that are invisible, and to point people towards, now I should add this up there, but to point people towards what they're really fully capable of in life through beauty. Why? Because I saw how it gave me new life, I guess probably from my own experience and then
You've experienced death?
Yeah.
Life? Blood?
Yeah. I have.
How have you experienced life?
Yeah.
Death, give life, blood.
Yes. I've experienced it through other people, but I guess my personal encounter happened 3 years ago when I had my child prematurely, and she died resting on my chest after 2 hours and 45 minutes, right? And I remember that evening being in this hospital room, and the hospital was so compassionate. They allowed her to be there as if she was alive, but her body was in a small crib beside me. She could fit on the palm of my hands. And my husband had to leave. And so I was in this hospital room, dim light. It felt almost like a cave, right? With the body of my child. And I remember just wailing out to God, to something. I was angry and hurt and just wailing out and said, I sure as hell, God, need you to hear me. And I need you to make yourself visible and known to me, like clearly. I don't want any of this abstract ambiguity. Like in this time, if I am going to live through this, I'm gonna need you to show yourself and make it plain. And I'm so grateful that before that, I knew what love could look like, you know? Like I knew, I'd seen, and I had kind of awareness of how love can show up, God could show up, right?
From street people making pottery?
Pottery, from people in South Africa who were breaking down racial boundaries and creating new community, through my work with young people for years, like through it all, like I had learned what love embodied and tangible looks like. So I prayed that prayer, I guess, and cried and just waited. And in praying though, I think I also kind of heard, it was like a conversation. I was doing most of the screaming, but like this silent kind of voice was telling me, you know, like, okay, just keep your eyes open and pay attention, right? Like just keep your eyes open. And so I began to pay attention, and I had a sabbatical leave. And, you know, God showed up through students, grad students at Rice, and some of them didn't even believe in God, you know, but showed up with meals for us weeks after, you know, with this compassion, and it's like love showed up at our door, and people who were willing to just like sit there in silence and not offer any kind of like cliche, you know, in a better place, you know, have another one, you'll be stronger. Like none of that. Like I had people who literally like really just said, I don't know what to say, but I'm here, you know, and it was like, that's exactly what I need. And that was love showing up. And even in the silence and in my tears and in the breaking and the real grief and the space to do that, God showed up. But love also provided space for me to reimagine what life could look like. Like if I was gonna live through that and not just survive, but like thrive. Like I was like, you know, I went back to all my old school kind of gospel teachings of like, life with Christ means joy and abundant life, you know? And it was like, yeah, I know that is possible even in the midst of my pain. So like, what does it look like for me to live abundantly and to honor the life of Ane and through my living, right? And so during that time, I began to just name things, and my husband, just name them to my husband. They were foolish. It's like, I want to get a studio downtown. I want to do art professionally. I'd like to travel the world taking pictures, you know, photographs. And it's like, these things would give me life, you know, and I want to love the world through things that are coming from my hands. And I feel like I have a lot to say. And during that time too, I was like creating on the floor in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep a lot, but I would be making cards and be making things with watercolor. And it was just like that fed me, right? And gave me life and kept me going, right? That creating process, because I realized when you go through something like that, and as a woman, for me particularly, my body couldn't carry her anymore. So there's a lot of grace and relearning how to love my body that had to happen. And through this process of creating, right, it was like, okay.
Creating healed?
Yeah, for me, in that moment it did. Because I realized, like, my body can create. And not to be angry with it. And that's taken time, right? And I'm still working on it. But during that, like, creation is healing me. Creating was healing me. And so I realized that I needed to live into this call, mustered up the courage. And I think the fear of not doing it became greater than the fear of doing it, you know, because you fear like, oh, I'll lose my car, I'll lose, you know, my house, I'll lose all these things if I follow what I feel God is calling me to do in this season, or like, what would people think? Because I have a master's of divinity, I've been trained to do church ministry, right? What are they gonna, like, what? yeah. And so there was a lot of that kind of wrestling, but eventually I mustered up the courage, and the fear of just not doing it was so strong. And in a way, for fear was my friend at that moment, that I took the proper steps to resign from that work that I had been doing. And honestly, the art project was a part of that awakening and building up of courage and resilience in me. Like, I listened. I guess I started kind of soaked in some of the lessons that were happening at the table while I was in the back working on my computer and doing the administrative stuff. I think I was listening in and hearing, like, wow, like, live the life you imagine. Like, God wants to bless that, and you are capable, and you are enough, and you're, you know. And I learned a couple of techniques alongside of people in the project when I brought in artists, and so my skills started growing. And, you know, so there were things I learned through the project, and I also learned through people like Miss C that, like, the world is just going to be hard. Like, it's just hard sometimes, but it doesn't have to crush you, right? You can still wake up. You can still say, Our Father which art in heaven. Like, you can still pray. You can still do these things and make it through. And so I resigned and got a studio downtown, started taking some photographs and creating some artwork and living. And, you know, living. I think, especially after everything happened, it was really hard for me to go back to life as it was, right? To walk back into the place where I was before my life was interrupted. And I almost felt like I couldn't breathe at times. It's like, whoa, this is not where I'm supposed to be. It's all good work. And it was like this weird kind of wrestling, right? With, like, this is good stuff. Like, this is Jesus stuff. And this is...
this is creation groaning.
Yeah, this is creation groaning. And in that groaning, too, I think it was hard for me to groan along. Like, I was already groaning, and so participating in the groans got really hard as well. And it was hard to breathe. And my heart was continuing, like, it was broken open with AJ and her passing, but it was also, like, broken open anew, you know, when I went back to work, and it was just this heaviness, and I just couldn't breathe. And I realized, like, God wanted me to breathe, you know, and that there are ways that I could live into this new thing while still co-creating and participating. And it is a part of, it is, it's not still, like, it's just a different way than I had once thought. You know, it wasn't even imagined, because this is what I imagined. This is what I imagined, right? But that was just kind of what I was taught and what I'd seen, and it was good and it was beautiful, and I wanted to be a part of it, you know. But then God showed me, like, yeah, but what your imagination, this dream you've had for years, it's also good and it's beautiful, and I'm there too, right? And so it's been cool. I create now and I'm breathing deeply. You know, it's not perfect, it's a grind. And I've lost a lot of things along the way, but I think once you have experienced what I experienced, like losing some of these like possessions is nothing. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll cry for that for a second, maybe, but I'm moving on, you know, and everything will come back. And it's made me a better person. I think it's made me, the journey continues to kind of make me a better partner to my husband, friend, daughter, sister, lover, friend, yeah, like all of these things, because I'm living into who I believe God has created me to be, you know? Yeah, so it's good.